Welcome to Bram Radio, episode number what? 23. All right, man. We're glad you're here. Hey, shout out also again to Emrod, Michael Rodriguez, my man, for letting us use the music. And also, like, subscribe if you want. I don't really care. I'm just glad you're here right now. And today is special. I got a buddy of mine here today who has an amazing story. Born in the early part of his life, grew up in Africa, moved to the Bronx, and somehow made it through buds. We'll get to that. Team guy's just an amazing legend. He's a author, he's a screenwriter, a director, an actor. You may have seen him in the movie Plane. And he was, number 3 or number 4 on that movie? Maybe 5, yeah, right? Like yeah, with Gerard Butler. Yeah. Transformers, Ambulance, yes. Yes. We just saw that not long ago. I'm like, that's right, I forgot Remi was in this. Yeah. My man, Remi Adeleke. Hey, glad you're here, man. Yeah, glad you're here. Yeah. So, and I know everybody knows that he's here because you guys already just saw the some of the clips and stuff that we played, but I just get excited and I want to always pump up my dude whenever I get to be around him. But thanks for being here today, man. I'm so stoked that you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
This is cool.
You've always been a blessing to me, man.
Yeah,
so it's always cool to connect with you, brother.
Thanks, man. Yeah. This is like I think you're like the first like real celebrity that we've had.
I want to go that far. Far from a celebrity,
man. We've had some pretty cool guests, but I think you guys will be stoked on this one, especially when you hear some of his story and some of the stuff that you have experienced in your life, and we were talking before this, because I see some of your mom stuff on Instagram, what she's doing. Like your mom is an absolute beast, and she's just, fitness fanatic, and so she's out there she's crushing it. Yeah. Older brother, is an engineer in DC. You got this amazing wife. She's a doctor, and then you have these 4 babies that are just out there just doing stuff and just sports and school and you guys are doing it all, man. Yeah. This is an example of what a real man is, and I'm again, man, stoked to have you here. Thanks, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man, and thanks for setting an example for me, man. I've been watching you for a long time, and been like as I said earlier, you've been a huge blessing and inspiration to me, especially with these businesses that you have built and everything that you're doing, and not just in business, but for the church, and it's just been amazing, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. Dude, talk to me about you, because I'm fascinated by your book, Transformed, right here.
Yeah.
Dude, guys, if you're an Amazon shopper, everybody I know has an Amazon subscription. You need to go ahead and get this book, Transformed. You need to get them both. These are both amazing books. We'll get to these in a second. But the book Transformed really goes into your childhood, like where you came from. And everybody's like, oh, Navy SEAL. I want to hear about the Navy SEAL stuff. But to me, is what is most fascinating about a lot of team guys is they're such an interesting cross section of society. Yeah. You take any SEAL platoon, or you take your Buzz class. You got the dude that used to be a stripper. Yeah. Then you got a guy that was a real estate executive. Yeah. Then you got the guy over here who was a pro triathlete. Then you got this guy over here who flipped burgers, and that's all he talks about. You got this guy. We had a guy in our Buzz class who he knew every Harry Connick Jr. song. Every one. Wow. And every day throughout all of Buzz, he would sing a different Harry Connick Jr. song to the instructors. So there's this weird cross section of society. Your story is fantastic.
Thank you, brother.
Tell me about the Africa, like growing up in Africa, how that worked.
Yeah, so my story, I always tell people all the time, my story actually starts with my dad's story. He was the firstborn son to my grandfather. My grandfather had like eight or nine wives, and he kept on having daughters. And then my father was born, and my grandfather was a chief of the Yoruba tribe, and which, in Western culture, European culture, royalty is referred to as king, queen, prince, princess, so that sort of thing, duchess. In African culture, especially West African culture, royalty is referred to as chief and your last name. So my last name, Adeleke, means the crown is supreme. My full name is actually Ade Remi, which means the crown has appeased me. And then Adeleke is the crown is supreme, or the crown is above. So that was my grandfather. He was a chief. He was Chief Adeleke. And then he had my father, and my father was the firstborn son. So he became, a chief as well. And long story short, my grandfather died when my father was 8. All the wives scattered. My dad ended up going down to the southern part of Nigeria, Lagos, and there were Christian missionaries there. And they didn't just teach the Bible, but they also taught math and science and literature. And so my dad was a savant. He was raised Muslim because my grandfather was Muslim. So he had memorized the entire Quran. But once the Christian missionaries came, he memorized the Bible, but he also memorized mathematical equations and everything about history. I mean, the dude was a genius. He ended up getting a full-ride academic scholarship to study engineering and architecture in London. Went there, got his bachelor's and master's, ended up being one of the first black men on the board of the British Financial Planning Council. And then he was one of the first black guys on the board of the World Trade Center in New York City. And he built a lot of his wealth and expertise in his wealth and businesses in the West. But then after a number of years, he decided, I want to go back to Nigeria because Nigeria is very rich in resources, cocoa, gold, natural gas, oil in abundance. And he knew that if Nigeria could turn around the corruption and get organized, and specifically get organized in a central location, then it could be like Saudi Arabia. It could be like America because the resources are in abundance. And so went back to Nigeria. Ended up buying a massive plot of land in the 70s called Marico, and his goal was to turn that around and turn it into a Wall Street, like an African Wall Street. And there was a military coup, and I believe in the late 70s, early 80s. And once that happened, the military took that land from him. Once the government was reinstalled, that's kind of when me and my brother came around. So my mom and my dad actually met at the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History in New York City. They fell in love. My mom's a New Yorker. She was born and raised in New York, and fell in love, got married 5 months later. Then my mom moved to Nigeria with my dad. And so then my brother was born, and then I was born. So when I was born, my dad had just got essentially awarded, not his land back, but he got awarded compensation for the land that the military had taken. And that compensation was in the form of a swamp. And essentially he took that swamp. Yeah, because long story short, the Nigerian government said, we're not going to give you Marico back. What do you want? And he said, well, give me the swamp, because my dad was an engineer. And so what he figured is that if I hired Dutch engineers and dredged the foreshore, I could turn it into an island and no one could ever come and say it was mine, because it was never nothing there. Nothing ever existed. And so so when I was born into a lot of wealth. My dad was, as I mentioned, he was a chief in the Yoruba tribe, but he was also extremely wealthy, multimillionaire. And when I was born, that's when he started to dredge the foreshore and create what we now know as Banana Island, which is one of the first man-made islands in the world. At the time, the name of it was Lagoon City, but it's now known as Banana Island. Some of the richest Africans in the world have estates and massive properties and compounds on Banana Island. And so so I was born into the richest of wealth. We had nannies, we had cars, we had drivers, we had horses. We lived on a compound. Me and my brother went to a very prestigious private school in Lagos. I mean, we lived the high life. I remember my dad hosting these very lavish parties, and expats and people from all around the world would be at these parties, and just high-end individuals. And long story short, the Nigerian government is very, very corrupt. And after the land had formed, the Lagos state government came in and said that the Nigerian federal government was never supposed to compensate him with that swamp. And they conveniently waited until that swamp had turned into an actual island. And instead of saying, hey, stop dredging, because they saw my dad hired Dutch engineers from the Netherlands. He brought in all this equipment into Nigeria to create this island. And nobody said anything. I mean, they all saw it, but they conveniently waited. And my dad, he was like, no, this is my island. And the Lagos state government took it from him. And my dad went to court to go fight him. And all of my dad's assets were wrapped up in this island, so much so that my mom would tell my dad all the time, listen, you need to put some money in the States, because if I don't trust this government, I don't trust this system. And if something happens, we're going to lose everything. And my dad was like, nope, my priority is my country. let's get this island fully established. Let's get the construction and the buildings and everything done, and then I'll put millions of dollars in the States. But right now, I'm going to put every one of my assets into this island. And he did. He leveraged the compound. He leveraged his art. I mean, he leveraged absolutely everything. His other businesses, all for the development of this island. He was all chips in. And so when that happened, that's when we essentially lost everything. My dad died 3 weeks later. He was essentially poisoned. Mm-hmm. And they had to take my dad out because they knew that my dad was, he was stubborn. He was smart. He was stubborn. He had connections all over the world. And they knew that he wasn't going to stop until he had got the island back, which was rightfully his. And so after he died, my mom had nothing. We went from rich to poor. And my mom was just like, there's no way I'm raising my kids here in Nigeria. So she brought us back to New York City. So that's kind of how I ended up.
So how old were you when you came back to New York?
I was 5. This was 1987. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So then you got to New York City and grew up in the Bronx.
The Bronx, yeah, man.
Right.
Got to the Bronx, and my mom did a real good job of masking the reality of what had happened. She kept our little apartment super clean. She had some of my dad's art, a lot of his books, kept them all around the apartment. She would keep us in the apartment, and there were times when she would save her money, put us in a cab, and we would go downtown to Manhattan, go see a play, go to a museum. My mom would take jobs at museums and art galleries in order to expose us to the arts. Along with sending us to public school, she would also homeschool us to make sure that we had that edge, because the public education system was horrible in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. And yeah, man, my mom was an absolute beast. But as time grew, as I grew older and time passed, that's when I really began to grow from being a child to an adolescent. I began to become more aware of things. I become aware of the crackhead in the park, and I become aware of the drug dealers, selling drugs to the crackheads. I become aware of the pimps and the mafia guys. I remember going into bodegas and seeing the mafia guys with the big collar suits going in and collecting tax from the local bodega owners. And the more aware of this I became, the more I began to realize, dude, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is a different area. And that was when I was about 8, 9 years old. And then, not having a father, I began to naturally gravitate to what a lot of kids in inner cities gravitate to, which is hip hop music, hip hop culture, street culture. I would see drug dealers, so I wanted to be a drug dealer. And then transfer into my teens. That's what I got into. For me, it was all about money. I started out stealing from my mom, and that progressed to stealing from local stores, and that progressed to getting jobs and stealing from jobs. I remember I had the sneaker scam where I would buy sneakers I worked at Athlete's Foot, and I would steal sneakers from Athlete's Foot, the sneaker store, and then I would sell them in my school for cash, at a reduced price. Mm-hmm. And I had that hustle going, and then I got into selling drugs, and then I got into high-level scams with cell phones where I was selling blow-up phones. I was able to get an activation credentials, and I was activating phones and selling these phones to drug dealers, utilizing the credit information or the PPI, private information of people who were in hospice who were about to die, to activate phones. And then I was able to activate 3 cell phones on one person's line of credit, and then those phones would stay on for 90 days before they would cut off. So I would sell that to drive. I was making crazy money. And then I was funneling that money into a record company because my goal was to essentially do the illegal stuff to go legal, to go legit, essentially. And so I was in the music business big time. I had a bunch of artists signing me. I had, I'd pay for studio time. We'd go do shows, and we put together a compilation album. And I was just trying to shop that thing in order to get a label deal so that I could get away from the illegal activity and go legit. But that all changed in 2001, December of 2001, when I ended up selling this drug dealer a bunch of phones. They were supposed to last for 90 days. They only last for 30 days. He had then flipped those phones and sold those phones to other drug dealers for double the price. So people came knocking on his door, so then he came knocking on my door. And not only was I threatened, but my mother's life was threatened as well. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. I got the drug dealer back his money within 24 hours because I already had some money, and then I just had to sell a couple phones. And then after that, that's when I decided I need to stop doing what I was doing, because there were people who were running the same cell phone scam I was doing it, but they were all getting caught prosecuted and sent to federal prison because it was a federal crime. And I was scared to death. I thought that when those phones cut off, that's what had happened, that I got caught. But later found out that was the case. But it was still a scare. It was still a scare. So that's when I decided, you know what, I need to get out of here. And fast forward to June of 2002, that's when I felt like I know it was the Lord. I felt like God was like, you got to get out of here, join the military. And I had watched 2 films early on. One was Bad Boys. That was the first film where I felt like I saw 2 African-American guys who still maintained who they were, the swagger, the grit, the street sense, but they were heroes. And that's when my eyes opened a bit. And I was just like, man, I could be a hero. And then the following year, The Rock came out. And that was the first time I was exposed to Navy SEALs. Yeah. And then it was after watching that film when I said to myself, I was 15 at the time, I said, if I ever turn my life around, that's what I would do. So fast forward to when I was 19 and, deciding, all right, I'm going to go into the military. I knew that I was going to go into the military to be a Navy SEAL. And I went to the Navy recruiter's office, and there's a lot more to the story. But long story short, God led me to the right woman, man, because first thing she did was she had me do the practice ASVAB test, took that test, passed it, got high enough to get into the Navy, but I didn't get high enough to become a SEAL. And then she ran my background and discovered I had 2 warrants out for my arrest. I had a warrant in New York and a warrant in New Jersey. And so I got up, got ready to run out got almost to the door, and she screamed at me, told me to stop. And I said, for what? She said, do you have a suit? And I said, no. She said, do you have something nice? And I said, I'm sure I could find something. Why? She said, come back tomorrow. And I said, for what? And she snapped at me and said, just come back tomorrow. And, I came back the next day. She was in her dress uniform. And she took me to both judges. She took me to the judge in New Jersey, advocate on my behalf. Essentially said, hey, this kid's trying to turn his life around after the act of war, because 9/11 had happened 9 months earlier. And then, judge was like, all right, if this guy's serious, I'll clear these warrants. And, he just has to pay the court fees, court fines, and then he won't have a record, and then he can go in the Navy. And then she went and took me to the judge in New York, said the same thing. The judge said the same thing. And then she fudged the paperwork because there's this entry paperwork that you fill out when you're going into the Navy, and, ask all these questions about your criminal history and all of this stuff. And the recruiter has to verify all of that you don't have a criminal history, you never had warrants, you never been arrested, you never had any charges. And she fudged all of that paperwork. And that's how I was able to essentially get in the Navy. See, she essentially snuck me into the Navy. And then, and that's how it all happened, man. That was that process from the Bronx to Africa. From the Bronx to the Navy. And, man, it was the best decision that I made, one of the best decisions that I made, because if I would have stayed in the Bronx, man, I would have definitely ended up dead on prison. Kind of like what you talked about earlier, offline about, power and patterns, you know what I mean? Like, I had to break the power but I also had to break the pattern. The only way I could do both was by actually getting out of that environment and going somewhere that was diametrically, opposite of where I had been.
Where in there did you get your relationship with God in order?
It wasn't until the teens.
Later.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, like you turned around, you looked back over your shoulder in the course of your life, and you were like, I can see all these spots in my life where God had his hand on me all the way through up until where I'm at now. And now you have all this. I think the best term for it, I don't even think it's a term, but retro evidence.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Evidence that you see when you're looking in that little tiny rearview mirror about the stuff that you've gone through. And by evidence of that, you can say, oh, and that's what brought me to now.
Yep.
What does my future look like?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, looking back, I know without an unequivocal doubt, everything was God. I mean, there's so many stories that I left out for the sake of time, but so many instances where, one step earlier, I would have been dead. You know what I mean? One day later, I would have been in prison. All of these things, like, God was protecting me. I didn't see it. I didn't know it. And, case in point, the recruiter, like, I walked into a Marine Corps recruiter's office first, and there was nobody in the office. And I sat there for 15 minutes and nobody showed up. And then I went into the Navy recruiter's office, And Tiana Reyes, my recruiter, ended up, taking that huge risk for me. And I say that that's a whole God moment because I get messages to this day from people who are like, dude, I've tried absolutely everything to get in the Navy. I made this mistake when I was a teenager. I had this little misdemeanor. And no recruiter won't touch me. No recruiter won't allow me in. They're saying I have to get letters from my congressman. And even that's hard to get. Like, what did you do? And it's the only thing I can say is like, man, dude, it was like God that led me to that right person. Because if I went into the Marine Corps recruiter's office and the recruiter was there, I would have probably been blacklisted and I would have never been able to do anything. And my recruiter ended up dying 2 years later of an autoimmune disease. And I remember I met her family, years later, and her family, her brothers specifically told me that's what she did. She would drive around the Bronx and tell guys who were like on a street corner, look, I know you, I remember you, we grew up together, I see where your life is heading, come with me, let's get out of here. And she actually did that for her brother. When he got in trouble, she got him into the Air Force. And so, like God had strategically led me to the one person who would take a risk on me and would help me get to my next step. And that's just been the story of my life, especially when I look back in retrospect, I can really see all of these little, pressure points that if they weren't pushed, who knows where I would be,
Where'd you learn how to swim?
I got to my first command, Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, man. And
were you a corpsman?
Yeah, I was a corpsman.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, man. And I didn't have a car, so I would run 3 miles uphill to the pool on the other end of base, jump in the shallow end, try to figure it out, run 3 miles back. And then finally I humbled myself and I asked the lifeguard, at the tower, hey, can you talk me through this? And the lifeguard started talking me through what to do. And then gradually, like I got better, I was able to get from one wall to the halfway point without stopping, then one wall to the other wall without stopping, then one wall to the other wall and back to the original wall without stopping. And it was a process, man. It was a process. And then I met this lieutenant colonel, I'll never forget, because I would run, uphill it was far. It was like 3.5 miles, I mentioned. And I remember getting to the pool locker room one day, again, going to like looking back and God putting these people in my life. And this lieutenant colonel, he had on his uniform and he was getting undressed and everything to swim. And he said to me, he's like, dude, I see you running like all the time. Like, what are you training for? You training for recon? Because he was a recon Marine. He had the bubbles and the dive pin and the wings. And I was like, no, sir. I was like, I'm actually training to go to Buds. And he was like, dude, like, do you need any help? Like, I see you, struggling. Can I help you? And I was like, absolutely. And he like that's what ended up like really getting me proficient, was him working with me one-on-one in the pool and getting me ready. And he would tell me these stories about getting dropped off the coast of a South American country and having to swim in and carry out an operation and then swimming back. And then that motivated me even more to really get down the combat side stroke. And then that's what ultimately, helped me pass the 500-yard swim test for the surrender to get in the Buds and, push-ups, pull all that stuff. And then that's how it all happened, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when people watching this, and they're looking at their life and they're trying to figure out, how do I get from point A to point B?
Yeah.
And they're looking at their point A and point B. Like, you had no idea you're going into the Navy until you made a decision to make a change.
Yeah.
And when you made that decision, then all of a sudden obstacles start popping up.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And one thing I always say, I think I've said it before on here, and so it's the difference between obstacles and battles.
Yep.
Do the O course.
Yeah.
And skip an obstacle.
Yeah.
See what happens when you get to the end.
Yeah.
There's going to be a dude in a blue and gold T-shirt, and he's going to be getting on you, and you're going to be doing it again.
Yeah.
You have to do every obstacle.
Yeah.
Every battle. You don't have to fight every battle, because if you fight every battle, you are going to take casualties in the battles that you're not supposed to fight.
Yeah.
And you need those resources to fight the battles you're supposed to fight.
Yeah.
And here's you, and you're going through life, and you're sitting there. All these things are popping up in front of you. Like, oh, I want to be a SEAL. Cool, I'm going to go and do this. And oh, I need to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
And so many people would have quit there.
Yeah. And not just learn how to swim, get the ASVAB scores,
Get the ASVAB
high
scores
enough.
up. Yeah.
Retake the ASVAB, and not only do that, learn how to do a push-up, because I was skinny. So it was like there was the obstacle swimming, but then there was the fitness obstacle, because I wasn't strong at all. I could barely do a push-up. I couldn't do a pull-up. But then there was the academics obstacle as well, because my ASVAB scores weren't high enough to get in the Buds, so I had to retake the ASVAB test once I got to my command. So, and I tell people all the time, when you have a dream, you're gonna always have obstacles in the way of that dream. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called a dream, right? Because a dream is something that's hard to attain, and you can make one of two choices. You can either throw your hands up and say, "Man, it's too many obstacles in my way. I can't do this. I can never get over this. I can never get over this struggle. I can never get over these obstacles," and quit.
Yeah.
Or you could just put in the extra hard work in order to overcome whatever deficiencies, aka obstacles that are in your way, so that you can achieve your dream. I truly believe that any dream is achievable, but you have to do the work. The problem is so many people don't want to do the work. Even if it's something as simple as getting over an addiction, that's attainable, because other people have gotten over addictions, whether it's pornography addiction, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's drug abuse, whatever the case. Like, everybody has the potential. I own a apparel company called Kedgeware. One of our shirts says unlimited potential, and on the back of the shirt is an MRI of a head, and you see in the brain matter, the words unlimited potential make up the brain matter. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted people to see that shirt and understand that we all have unlimited potential, which means we can all achieve. Like, obviously, a human being will never be able to fly. You know what I mean? Like literally, like jump, levitate, right? But there are specific dreams most dreams are attainable, but you just got to do the extra hard work, and that's what I had to do. I started from ground zero. I remember running to the pool the first time, and I was just like, wow, this is really, really hard. And then I remember getting in the pool and not even be able to get a quarter of the way. And same thing, I was like, man, this is hard. But I just kept on showing up, and that's what it's all about.
Man, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So you what Buds class?
266.
266. And how'd Buds go?
Buds was a kick in the nuts, man. I mean, it was rough, man. It was, I mean, you know the deal, man.
Oh, yeah.
The worst part of it for me, the swims, man. The swims were a kick in the nuts, man, because I never swam in the ocean before. And so the 2 mile time ocean swim was a problem for me. Just so you know, I'm like, just for the sake of time, I'm cutting out, because I was in 250, then I, got to dive phase, got dropped to 250, went back to First Marine Division, which is another story in and of itself. And then I went back and then I went from there back to Buds and made it through. So I don't know how many. I just jumped to 266.
Sure. Yeah. 266.
But the swims were just relentless, man. Like, everything else I can handle. The 4 mile time run, obstacle course, surf torture, drown proofing, all that stuff. The swims were just the hardest part for me.
Yeah. So Buds, you get through that, and then get to the teams.
Yeah, actually, like, I came to Christ before like in SQT. So there's a lot more to the story, but in short, I was totally out of control, and met a girl while I was in Buds, fell head and over heels in love with her. She was a Christian at the time. She's now an atheist, which is interesting. But one of the things that she would love to do was go to church on Sunday. And she told me, she was like, if we date, you got to go to church with me. So I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to spend time with her, to get close with her. So I would go to church with her. And then gradually over time, I pulled her away from the church. But like, when I got to static line jump school, which was right here, I ended up on my second jump. The winds were really high. We were down at Brownfield. The winds were really high. It's a lot more to the story. I was the number 3 guy, but then when I jumped in the stick, when I jumped out, I became the number 4 guy, because I fell faster than the number 4 guy, and the DZ commander was yelling into a microphone and into the radios that we had, and said, "Hey, number 3 guy, turn into the wind, turn into the wind, turn into the wind." Mm-hmm. And I was the number 3 guy, but I didn't realize that I had became the number 4 guy. So he was actually screaming at the number 4 guy who had became the number 3 guy. And because I was already into the wind, and the winds were really, really high, he just started screaming more into the microphone, turn into the wind, turn into the wind, turn into the wind. So I was like, this is my second jump. Maybe he knows something I don't
turn
know.
downwind.
So I turned because I thought he was talking to me, and I turned, and as soon as I turned, the winds were so high, I just started coming in faster on the, and I hit the ground, man. And as soon as I hit the ground, my ankle shattered, dude. Snap, crackle, and pop. And I broke my medial malleolus, and I got up to walk, and I just collapsed. The bone was just slipping all over the place. And so I knew I had to make a decision, because you got to go check in with the medic. That's the first thing they have you do. And I was like, man, I got to hide this injury, because if I already broke my ankle on my second jump, who's to say I'll heal up after 6 months, come back and break it again. And then I had another 6-month period. And so I went, and she saw me limping. She was like, what's wrong with you? And I had actually broke my right ankle, and I told her I think I twisted my left ankle. And she said, take your boot off. Took my boot off. She was like, yeah, I see some swelling there, but you should be fine. So she cleared me. And
thank you.
Yeah. And then I got on the bus, told the guys in my class, I was like, hey guys, this was going on. And he was like, don't worry, we'll help hide the injury so you could do your last, because we were going to do the last 2 jumps. But as soon as the bus pulled back into the hangar, then the instructor was like, hey, we're calling it. The winds are just way too high. We can't do any more jumps for the day. So I was like, dang it. So I went, buddy of mine helped me to my car, got to my apartment. My buddy helped me up the steps. As soon as I crossed the door, I collapsed, man. I couldn't walk, man. And I had to crawl all around my apartment. And my buddy of mine who played he played football at SDSU. He came over the next morning, and he spatted up my ankle, and then went back to the hangar. And the first thing they had us do was practice PLS. And dude, so I remember like going up, limping up to the top, to the practice PLF. Yeah, man, it was kicking the nuts. And the instructor was like, that wasn't right. You didn't land properly, like, because I couldn't land properly, and do it again. So they kept making me do it. And mom, it is excruciating. And then
they're making it worse while it's happening.
Yeah. And then the medic, she shows up, and she's like, wait, stop it. Like, he sprained his ankle yesterday. I already looked at it. Stop making him PLF. Like, let him, he'll be fine. You're just making it worse. He sprained his ankle. And I was like, thank God, man. And my whole class was looking at me like, yo, this dude's nuts, man. Like, this dude's nuts. And so did my 3rd jump, tried to land on my butt the best I could, but that was excruciating. Did my 4th jump. And then I remember the DZO commander was on one of those 4x4s, and he drove with me. He's like, why are you limping? Why aren't you limping? And as he said, why are you limping? You're still limping. Why? And I cursed him. I was like, because I broke my effing ankle. That's why. And he's like, oh. And then I went to the hospital. I couldn't walk for like 4 months, man. But I tell that story because it was in those 4 months that girl was like really showed me the love of God, man. And I had been super angry. I was angry about everything, angry about my life and how things turned out and yada, yada, yada. And I would kind of pour out my anger on her because she was the one that was present, and she would clean my house. She would help me shower. She would bring me food. She left her dog at her apartment, at my apartment, to watch me, to hang out with me during the day because I couldn't do anything. I was just laid up. And as soon as I was able to walk, I broke up with her. And like a month later, I remember she just broke down crying, in my apartment. I told her to get out of my apartment. And a month later, I felt like God said, take her back. And again, I wasn't a believer, but looking back in retrospect, I know it was God. And I got back into a relationship with her, still not treating her properly. And then I got sent to cold weather survival school in Alaska, Kodiak. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really, really had a chance to reflect on my life, because we would go on these land navigation hikes, and I was all alone, and there was no technology, just out there in the woods, man, trying to get from one point of Kodiak, Alaska to another point in this barren wilderness, dude. And it was like God was holding up a mirror, because I had a lot of time to reflect, and I just was seeing how I treated my brother, my mom, my girlfriend, just people, like how arrogant I had become, and I didn't like what I saw. And I made the decision, like while I was out there on the land navigation hikes, whatever happens when I get back, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to marry my girlfriend. I'm going to stop cheating on her. I'm going to be a good dude. Like, I don't like what I see. And when we got out of land navigation, like we were out there for like 2 or 3 days, we came back to the barracks that they had on Kodiak, Alaska. And I remember there was only one phone, and I called her up as soon as I got there, and I was like, hey, listen, don't say anything. I know I've been such a dirtbag. I'm not going to be that guy anymore. I want to marry you when I come back. I'm going to be a good. And she was dead silent. And I was like, man, what's going on? And then she was like, I wanted to wait to tell you until you got back. I was like, what? Like, I thought she had cancer, because the thought of her leaving me never crossed my mind. I figured she'd never, I had done horrible stuff to her. She never left me. And she was pretty much like, I'm done with you. And come to find out, again, all God, a week earlier, while I was on that hike in the wilderness, and like God was showing me what I had become, she went to a party and she ran into a coworker who she had worked with years earlier, and that coworker was married to a team guy, and that team guy had cheated on the girl on her a bunch. And the coworker told my friend, she's like, hey, my girlfriend, she was like, hey, I heard that you're dating a team guy. How is it? And she was like, oh, it's all right. She's like, well, if it's just all right now, you should leave him, because it's going to get worse. Like, and I'm speaking from experience. I'm married to a team guy. It's a horrible experience, and been cheated on and yada, yada, yada. So just leave him. And that one conversation a week earlier, while God was speaking to me in the wilderness, is what gave her the strength to finally leave me. And so when she told me that on the phone, I was like in shock. I was like, dude, like, I know I've been a dirtbag. She was like, I'm done. I'm over. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. And that crushed me. And I just remember my brother would tell me all the time. He was like, Remi, when you hit rock bottom, just remember to cry out to Jesus. Not if, but when. Just remember to cry out to Jesus. I remember being in Alaska and walking now, having that happen, like walking through my land navigation and all that stuff, just saying, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. Jesus, because I was just feeling all this torment. And then when I got back from Alaska, she came to my apartment to pick up her stuff. And I was just like, yo, please, take me back. Like, give me a chance. Like, I'm destroyed. Like, I tried to fix myself, and I realized that it was too late, but you got to give me a shot. And she was just like, no, I'm done. So then, like, the words just came out of me. I was like, all right, if you're not going to take me back, can you at least take me to church? And she's like, all right, I won't take you back, but I'll take you to church. And she took me to church the next day, Cornerstone Church, right off the 54. Mm-hmm. And that was when, like, I dedicated my life to Jesus, man. I was just like, yo, because I felt like I needed something bigger than me to help me, because I had problem kind of like, I needed something to take that power away, which could then help me break the pattern so that I could be a different person. Mm-hmm. And that's where it all came to a head. And then ever since then, like, everything changed, man. Like, like I gave up sex and freaking gave up, all the crazy stuff that I was doing. And I remember dudes in my buds class, in my SQT class, and in the teams, they were just like, they couldn't believe it, because they knew how wild and crazy I was, beforehand. So they was like, nah. And it was like, what happened to you, Remi? What happened? What's going on? Like, we know this is just a phase. What's going on? It's like, yo, man, I had an encounter with Jesus, man. Yeah. And it's real. And like, I don't want to go back to my old ways.
What year was that?
That was 2008, man. 2007, 2008, yeah, man.
When Sergio De La Mora.
Yeah. He was the pastor. Yeah. He was the pastor, Sergio. Yep.
And then Jimmy Mina was a worship leader. He lives just down the street from you.
Okay.
Still here.
Okay.
Yeah. Good friend of mine.
Yeah.
So very familiar with that church. In fact, we did a Life of Valor event.
Yeah.
At that church.
Yeah.
So it was it's 2008.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to do is teams, you did some amazing deployments.
Yeah.
Did some
That's good combat deployments.
Good. Yeah. Got amongst it.
Yep. I was an ASO guy, so I got to live best of both worlds, man. Doing the meetups with sources, collecting intel, and then using that intel to build intelligence packages and kick down doors, man. So a lot of DAs, man. Just a lot of cool stuff, man. Stuff, man. I enjoyed it, man. It was everything that I hoped for and more, you know what I mean? And all my deployments were to the sandbox, you know what I mean? So got to avoid the PI,
right?
Dreaded PI, you know what I mean? Pumps, but yeah, man, I enjoyed it. And then my first son was born in 2014, and my second son was born in 2015, and then in 2016. that's when my contract was up. And like that's when I really started making plans to either, to get out, man. Because I wanted to be home with my boys, especially my father dying when I was 5.
Yeah.
I just knew that, like, I wanted to do 20 years, but I just knew that, I felt God say, it's time for you to go and be with your wife and your kids and your family, man. And so I got out in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got out in 2016, and again, then you had another vision and a goal and a dream.
Yeah.
And obstacles, and battles to fight, and then you got to work on that. Tell us about some of the projects.
So when I got out, man, I was actually in grad school getting my my master's in business, and that's when my goal was to actually go into business consulting full time, and then I got a phone call one day to work on Transformers, man, and that's when that one day turned into 3 weeks. 3 weeks turned into 6 months on that project, and then doors started open, man, to consult on. I mean, the deal, as a team guy, consult on projects, and that's when I really was like, dude, I want to, because I would get these scripts to consider working on these projects. I was just like, man, this ain't good, man. So that's when I was like, I'm gonna teach myself screenwriting. And again, big challenge, just like I was like, I'm gonna teach myself how to swim. I'm gonna teach myself the ASVAB thing. But I taught myself screenwriting. The first screenplay I actually wrote was Chameleon. That was my the first screenplay I ever wrote. It was an idea that had been in my head, and then it ended up getting a book deal. The script got picked up, got optioned by a big producer in Hollywood, and was attached to a studio. But then the actor that was cast did a movie. The movie bombed, and so that actor didn't have the value, and so. But the blessing was, I was able to get paid from a book deal for Chameleon. But anyway, learned screenwriting, and then from there, decided, dude, because of my experience with Chameleon script, I don't want to just write a script and then wait for a director to attach. I want to learn how to be a director. So I just, yeah, man. I was like, I'm gonna learn directing.
Or achieve much, Remi? Come on,
yeah, man. I was like, I'm gonna learn directing and then started out with my first short, which is the organ harvesting short film, The Unexpected, and the reason why
Unexpected.
Yep.
Zach, you got that? Is it on? Can we pull it up online?
Yep. So YouTube.
Unexpected film by Remi Adeleke.
Yeah. So
explain what's going on here.
So this is based on a true story around an international organ harvesting ring. And in this particular, when people hear the term human trafficking, they tend to focus more on sex trafficking, but human trafficking is a blanket term. There's so many subsets under it. There's organ harvesting, forced labor, forced marriage, and then sex trafficking, and then other forms of human trafficking as well. People being used as mules to move drugs in and out places. And so this particular film focuses on organ harvesting, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. As a matter of fact, Cairo, Egypt is considered the organ harvesting capital of the world. India has a huge organ harvesting problem. Mexico has a big organ harvesting deal. The cartel will get involved in a lot of that. A lot of Americans are traveling down to Mexico to purchase organs on the black market. And so I decided to focus this film on organ harvesting because it's grossly underreported. And what's going on in here is this particular girl is a Yazidis girl, and she was moved from Syria to Venezuela to get her heart extracted and sold on the black market to a Western family. And a lot of people don't realize this, but it was around 2014, 2015, ISIS carried out a genocide against the Yazidis, and all the men were slaughtered, and the girls and women were taken as slaves, some for sex trafficking, some for organ harvesting, some for forced labor. And that's how ISIS was funding a lot of what they did. And so what's going on in this particular film is this Yazidis girl was moved to this place to get her heart taken out, so that they could then be transported in a specific time in a safe timeline to the west, to Mexico, so that the transplant could take place. So I decided to do this, and I didn't think anything of it, man. I just figured, let me just make this short film, and then Hollywood came knocking. A bunch of people watched the short, were moved by it, and said this needs to be a feature film. And so for the last, I would say 2.5 years, I've been, pulling financing together, pitches together, all of this stuff, trying to get studios on board to make the feature version of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So yeah, man, I taught myself directing. That was the first thing I directed, and then directed another project, little short commercial, then directed another short film that you helped me out with, The Chameleon, which was an adaptation of a chapter in the book.
Yeah.
And then actually last week I got hired to direct this unscripted sports series, really inspirational sports series for a production company. And it was just a pilot, but it was really, really cool. Got to, interview some really dope athletes. Mm-hmm. And yeah, man, so it's just been kind of progressing. But as you said, obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, Buds was one thing, but trying to make it in the film and TV business as a filmmaker is a whole nother thing, brother.
I get asked so many times from people, because I do a lot of mentoring, coaching.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I always get is just, hey, Bram, so this is the thing that I want to do, and how do you go through, like, and they're all questions based on adversity.
Yeah.
How do you get from here to there?
Yeah.
I can't even see there.
Yeah.
I said, well, a dream and a vision are two different things. You have to be able to have a vision for something when you see it, and the Bible even talks about the age differences that happen. Young men dream visions, old men dream dreams, and I think that the dream and the vision have to coexist. You have a dream. Your vision is going to be the vehicle is going to get you there.
Yeah.
And if you lose one of those, if you lose the vision that's going to get you to the dream, you're gonna lose that guide.
Yeah.
And so when you're going through all of your stuff, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by this, because it's just the guy who's just willing to show up.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Just show up. Just keep on driving, keep on working, and you just keep on showing up.
That's it, man.
That is, I think that is one of the highest qualities that you can have in a teammate.
100%.
In a marriage, that reliability, just being reliable in your faithfulness, being reliable in, are you going to show up, reliable in that you are going to keep driving to provide. And so when you have a guy in front of you that is like that, man, it's like the level of expectation is going to be there, and the people that are around you are going to rise to the level of expectation that you've placed on the table.
Exactly, and that's what it's all about. It's about setting that example. Not just for my coworkers like Brad, who after seeing how I show up every day, he finally started showing up every day, and his specific skill set as a writer. Now he has a film that he wrote this on the verge of getting made, but for my kids, you know what I mean? This important thing that I'm trying to model for my kids. Mm-hmm. And that's why I try to keep my door open during the day. So when my kids get back from school, or my little ones, when they're at home with the nanny, they can come in and see, hey, Daddy's working. Daddy's not quitting. Daddy's not giving up. Daddy's showing up every single day. Mm-hmm. And why am I doing this in front of you? So that you can have a framework to utilize, so that when you come of age and start reaching that serious adversity, you know that, hey, Daddy didn't have an easy path, but he kept on showing up. That's what I got to do. And I think that that's an art that's been lost, especially in this next generation that's coming up now. Is the art of persevering. You know what I mean? And the art of just going after rejection. I get rejected every day in the film and TV business. I was on a phone call last night, got some type of rejection. And it's easy to get discouraged, and woe was me, and blah, blah, blah. This is why I'm getting to screw them. But it's like, no. And I told Brad today in regards to that call I had last night, bro, it's okay. It's okay. That piece of rejection was fine, but we're going to keep Charlie Mike and continue a mission, because that's the only way we are going to succeed. Yeah. And in marriage, man, like, it's so easy. Marriage is hard. Marriage is hard, man. It's tough. Yeah. And I think the lie that a lot of couples get, they watch these movies or they read these love novels, and I just got hired by Netflix to work to help adapt the book into a TV series, and so I had to read the book, and it's like a love book. It's like a love story, romance novel. And I was reading, and I was just like, dang, like, this is where so many people get it twisted, because they read these love novels or watch these movies, and they think that this is what marriage is. This is like, it's supposed to be easy. the couples are supposed to love, both love the same things and like the same things and be so much alike. And that's not the reality. You know what I mean? Like in marriage, like you and your spouse are going to be different. And God uses those differences to sanctify you both and to bring you closer together. But marriage, that friction can be hard. But you got to keep showing up and not quit, because it's so easy to quit. That's why the divorce rates are so high. But it's an art. It's an art that's been lost. You know what I mean?
I have a lot of guys that they like to get they're going through buds, right? And I have one guy in particular, kid that I mentored. Love this guy, and he's in buds. And he comes to me one day. He comes over to the house and he says, "Hey, I think I'm gonna get married to my girlfriend." I said, "Now? That's your timing? Now? So you're doing one of the most difficult things that a human being can do. Get through buds. Then what you're going to do is you're going to try to do one of the most difficult things that a man can do. Life is have a wife. And you're going to do them. You're going to roll both of these big, huge boulders up a hill at the same time. Lose your footing one little bit. And one of those rocks is going to crush you.
Exactly.
How smart do you think this is? And he was like, "Yeah, I figured you'd say something like that." I said, "It's just some advice,
some old wisdom."
He went and got married. And I said, "Okay, all right. Well, I'm in it with you, dude. Let's walk through this. Let's walk through this together. Let me know what you need." And it was whatever amount of time, a month later. It wasn't long, a month, maybe 6 weeks, a couple months, whatever. And he came back. He goes, "Hey, Bram, it turns out you were right." And I'm not saying that somebody can't go through buds and get married and have it be successful. And I've seen those stories more so than this one. But I just happen to know this guy at that stage of life, and there's just this. There's the degree of difficulty of things is real.
Yes.
And this you brought up a point about this generation. This generation that we have now, these high teens, low 20s, like that span that they really want in the to go through buds. They're in that right space in their life where they got green bone, man. They're invincible. But they don't. Many of them don't have the mental capacity to do it. Right now, 77% of military age fighting men will just be disqualified from joining the military because of academics, obesity, mental health, and there's another one. I think it's there was another one. I forget what the other one is. But then and 35% of people in that age group said that they would rather die than join the military.
And that's why recruiting is down across the board.
And they are struggling for people because people now don't have that what you're talking about, that go get. I'm not going to stop. I am going to keep coming at me. I'm going to keep coming at the problem. I'm going to keep coming at the situation. I'm going to keep going after that dream. That vision's alive. It is real. It is in my heart, and I am driving this thing towards there. And on top of that, man, I know that I have a guide. I know that God is in there every step of the way. I remember one time you came on and did a Life of Valor event a couple times with us, right? At First Bank Center in Colorado. I think it was outside Denver. And you had this message that you were talking about, and I remember I'll never forget it because I was right on the side stage there, and you were talking about light, and what it means to when you are walking and you're walking through a lit area. I remember what the analogy was that you used. But you made a mention of you have a choice to be in light or to be in darkness. You can't navigate life when you're in darkness. You have to have some degree of light. It might be a red lens. It might be a dimly lit room or whatever, but you have to have some degree of light on it so you can see the map, so you can work the compass and the protractor, so you can work you can work your navigation aid, so you can see where you're going. And these kids in this generation
No,
Many of them don't have that.
no, not at all. And I think a big part of it is social media. You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
They, like Instagram, right? So it's like they see things and they see people posting in the Lamborghini or the big mansion, all of this stuff, and they see it and they're like, oh, they think that came instantly. You know what I mean? I think that's the perception and that a lot of young people have is these things come in, and why can't I have that? I should have that now. And it's like you don't realize whether it's real or fake, and a lot of what's on social media is fake anyway. But whether it's real or fake, if it's real, it probably took that person years to get to that point, years of grinding. But so many young people, they see it and they feel entitled. They're like, I should have that now. And when they get punched in the face or get rejected, they don't know how to handle that rejection or that punch in the face, that proverbial punch in the face. And so they crawl away and they're not showing up time after time after time. And they quit so easily. And that's the problem, I think. I even see it in like with people from our generation now sometimes, where it's just like, it's so easy to get told no and to just walk away, when I heard something my pastor said the other day. He said, God is in the no's, God is in the yeses, and God is in the not yes, not no, but wait. Mm-hmm. And going back to the importance of having God in our lives, because when we have him in our lives and the no, we know that it's for a reason. Mm-hmm. We know that it's for a purpose.
That's right.
And we know that it might be for protection, and we don't know what it might be for, but years later, we'll be able to look back on that and be like, I get it.
Yep. Oh, I can't tell you how many times I've had no's, even in business, being told no and getting investors, no. You're just like, come on.
Yep.
And I know that there is a reason on the backside. And now in retrospect, I'm like, oh, yeah. Now I know why.
Exactly.
Now I know why he had that. So, question for you. What's coming up next for you?
Yeah, so what's coming up for me right now, Unexpected, the short film we saw a clip. We're working on getting that. We're in the casting process now. We got a studio on board that said they'll distribute the film if we get specific actors for the lead roles, And so we're trying to get that done. Also still kind of raising a little bit of financing on that as well. Hoping to go into production in October. Then I have another film called Winner, which is inspired by Brad's story.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're hoping it's a small little indie film, 21-day shoot. So we're hoping to try and knock that out like sometime in the next month or so.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, just that. And got my 2 books, Transformed and Chameleon. Those are out now. You can get them wherever books are sold. I did the audio read for both books. So,
did you really?
Yeah. So if you like my voice, then you'll hear you can hear it for hours in both books. Yeah, man. So that's what I got going on.
I can't stand the sound of my own voice. I hear it all the time because Zach will be in here editing, and I'm in the office across the door. Just like Zach, close the door. I can't stand the sound of my own voice.
All good.
Dude, so you did, So I read Transformed. I have yet to dive into this one. I'll do.
That's yours, man. That's your copy.
Awesome, thank you, sir. I'm gonna start on that but Transformed, dude.
Yeah.
That's a for you guys checking this out, when you read Transformed, it's a more like, so Remi just kind of like skipped along the wave tops of the story. There gets into like specific situations and really gets in, and it's a fantastic book. How's the book doing?
It's doing good. It was an Apple bestseller. It got picked up to be a film last year. I've already written the script. I had to take a pause on the deal just because there was some things in the deal that just didn't work out. But we're looking to revisit it, within the next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
Good.
Yeah.
Get after it, man.
Yes,
Keep
sir.
doing what you're doing. How can people find you?
Remi Adeleke, RemiAdeleke. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the same.
Good.
I got a unique name, so I was able to keep the unique handles.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, man. And man, just keep driving, dude. Your story is fantastic.
Thank you,
you are amazing. It's watching you kind of go through this because we're in touch.
Yeah.
You swing by here quite a bit. We hang out.
Yeah.
You're just we do events out and around the country with Life of Valor now and then. It's just watching your your dream
Yeah.
and unfold, and being there and having front row seats to the Remi show, man, it's like I've used you as an example to some of the guys that I mentor. You know,
Thank you,
it's just like, man, you gotta, I think you're gonna be okay. Let me tell you a story, and I'll talk about your story. And it's like I'm like a minute in, you know, it's like, and they're just like, seriously, this guy exists? I'm like, yeah, want me to call him? And it's your story's awesome.
Thank you, brother.
And your family is amazing. Dude, such good stuff. So thanks for being here. Man, I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you too.
All right, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. That's a wrap. Another episode. Bram Radio. Stay dangerous.
Thanks for coming.